Back in 1959, Dusak made one appearance, for an official race at Daytona International Speedway. For many drivers, they said there was a ton of fear. In the words of AJ Foyt, it was like racing a roadster in the snow, and he stayed puckered all day. It scared the hell out of him at the time. Unfortunately, 2 drivers passed during the preparation for that race, including Marshall Teague, known for driving the Hudson Hornet, and George Amick, who was killed on the last lap of the one USAC event, an IndyCar event in the history of that sport. The last time any type of IndyCar came to this track was 2007 for testing purposes. But for tonight, we get to see how these drivers will handle one of the most difficult tracks in the history of open wheel racing here at the Daytona International Speedway. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Virtual World Center of Racing in Daytona Beach, Florida, for the Global Sim Racing Channel's coverage of the Ultimate Conquest Online Racing Association Throwback Indycar Series, presented by 94 Motorsports. Tonight, it's the Grand Prix of Lake Lloyd. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. This track, well known for its history in many types of motorsport, let's take a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around this road course.
Welcome to the Daytona International Speedway. While many oval fans associate this Central Florida track with mainly NASCAR, the road course has gained just as much worldwide fame thanks to it hosting motorcycles and sports cars for decades. In fact, the flagship road race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, has become a major draw for drivers of all disciplines, many eager to have a go at endurance racing. The stats make this place sound relatively simple, with 12 corners on the regular road circuit and 14 on the NASCAR version, both spread amongst 3.5 miles. Indeed, a majority of the lap is spent on the oval portion, where you fly along the notoriously steep banking. But it's easy to underestimate the challenge presented to the drivers. The infield portion begins with the scary kinked entry of Turn 1. Not only is it the fastest part of the track, but the transition from the banking to the flat tends to upset the car as you slow it down. There's also the bus stop chicane on the backstretch. Added in the 80s, this is a tricky piece of circuit that punishes a poor exit severely, with it leading back into the latter half of the oval. As you'd expect, the long periods on throttle mean that drafting tends to play a factor in the racing. It also means passing isn't usually too great of an issue if you have the pace to catch someone. The more difficult thing is managing to gap your opponent so that they don't ride in your slipstream once you get by. With half a century of endurance racing collected among these walls, it's not unfair to say that road racers have just as much claim to call Daytona home. Fans who come to watch certainly won't be disappointed by the high speeds and fantastic thrills it invariably provides each year.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for Daytona International Speedway. Now, DJ, the last time any type of IndyCar actions came to this track was with this chassis back in 2007 during winter testing and preparation for some of the road course races that year. At the time, it was Helio Castroneves and Tony Kanaan among the top of the speed charts. For these drivers tonight, what are some of the expectations here at Daytona?
Well, Justin, I think one of the biggest expectations is to just hold on, and that has many, many meanings. As you said, this is a very unfamiliar track for these IndyCars, only testing in the one USAC race ran back in the day, and there's a reason for that. This is not the best track for these cars. It's very difficult, it's very slippery, it's very tricky, and so you are going to see an ultimate test of driver here tonight. Danger zones to really watch out for are coming in and out of the infield section, coming off of the high banks in turn 1 and then returning back onto them in turn 6. On both of those areas, the change in banking, the change in everything is really going to unsettle the car. It's very easy to get the car spin and turned around on that. And so it's going to be a real test of the drivers. But then once we get on to NASCAR 1, NASCAR 2, NASCAR 3, and NASCAR 4, it's going to be like we're racing an oval. It's going to be a lot of drafting, and it's going to be high speed, and it's going to be fun. But it is going to be tough no matter where you are on the track to keep everything together.
And a lot of drivers were trying to find the balance between managing the tires and managing speed throughout the practice sessions, throughout the week, and throughout the night. We'll see who manages them the best. But the championship standings are being well managed entering tonight by Paul Jenkins. There is a note, however, for the driver second in the standings in the championship battle. If you noticed last week, Brian Beard did enter the race last week, but as mentioned during an interview back in September, he was having a medical procedure. He in turn registered for the race from a hospital bed in hopes of getting credit for the race and to secure last place points in an effort to try and minimize the damage for his inability to race. The official ruling post-race originally was that since no laps were turned by Beard, no points were to be assessed for the round. This decision then was appealed by Beard, citing Rule 13A and 13B of the rulebook, which states that the points shall be assessed in accordance with iRacing qualifying and race results. While officials believe the spirit of the competition dictated that no laps returned, no points should be awarded. The ruling from the appeal was because the rules as written do not clearly reflect that opinion, and last place qualifying and race points in turn were awarded to Brian Beard. As a result, it's an 82-point deficit he has entering tonight. Andy York enters tonight third, 407 points back, looking to clinch up P3 in the next couple rounds. The battle onward is still not over yet for a top 4 spot. Nate Burke holds on to that spot by 52 points over Robert Bluen. That's a good 653 points behind your points leader entering tonight. Now let's talk a little bit more about the race details, DJ, as we get ready to go racing for 150 miles.
Well, tonight's race is the 18th of our 20-round schedule. That's right, including this. We've only got 3 to go. We are racing the old school, hence why we are called the Throwback Indycar Series. It's the Dallara IR05. Tonight's race is going to be about 42 laps, and what that means is we're going to be looking at a 2-stop race from these guys. We'll go into those details a little bit later, and we are also dealing with custom fixed setups tonight, which means that these are the same setups across the board for everybody, but they have been adjusted a little bit to make things a bit racier. And the biggest thing that people have been talking about tonight with those adjusted fixed setups is the fact that you cannot change the brake bias. It's another thing that has been throwing these drivers off, and it could be a storyline throughout the race.
Some drivers have been asking, please give me one extra click in one direction to be able to adjust. Of course, setup was locked in stone entering tonight. Now, let's talk about these conditions, as drivers will get 10 minutes and 4 solo qualifying laps for tonight's event. 85 degrees, 63% humidity. Check that 64% as that's gone up with southwest winds 12 miles an hour around the racetrack, gusting their way around the circuit, partly cloudy skies. And we're racing from sunset all the way into complete darkness tonight, DJ. At the end of this race, we'll be under the lights fully.
That is correct, and it means it's going to get nice and cool around this track. And what that'll mean is that the outlaps coming out on these tires are going to be extra crucial, getting those tires up to temperature. For those of you familiar with the track, you exit the pit lane in the infield section before you then get up onto the high banked ovals, and you better hope that you are able to get those tires up to good temperature by the time you get to the high banks, because if not, you're going to be skating around there like nobody's business.
100%, and we're taking a look as some of the drivers are crossing the stripe on some of their outlaps and or their first lap attempts at the moment. David K. Hall, for example, 135.7 across the stripe. That time does count for 11th on the board, the quickest time, as seen by Paul Jenkins, a 113.114. However, the speed shown in practice showed drivers could go as fast as 1 minute and 32.4 seconds. Brian Beard was 0.3 quicker than anybody else in practice. He's your winner of the past 3 road course events entering tonight and looking to close up that gap after his health complications the past week or so.
Beard, obviously one of the early favorites here, sitting in that second place in the championship and eager to gain back on some of the points that he lost in our last round. And as you said, he is sort of the road course guru in this Throwback IndyCar Series, so he's going to really be looking to have a good run. As you watch here, he's going to start to cross the start-finish line, not going to get down to that 32 that we saw him, but that is going to bump him up the list nevertheless. Paul Jenkins now going to try to cross the line, 33.6. That is not going to be fast enough for him, but he will still remain in P2.
For the reason you may have noticed, the time was in the ones that would have been up inside the top 3, mind you, for Beard. He did have an incident point on his lap. That would disallow your lap on any portion of the racetrack. That's why Paul Wildridge, who's had some strong past couple races since starting competition this season, is up at the top of the pylon. Move one other driver up to the front. Diego Asensno's in the number 6 with a 132.8.
Bit of a surprise there for Diego. We normally don't see him really come alive like that until race time, but a wonderful lap from him, and that is going to be the early benchmark, really sticking it to everybody. Now as we watch Nate Burke work his way down here onto the tri-oval section, he's going to cross the start-finish line on an out lap, so we'll see what he's able to do. Here comes Andy Yerk on another hot lap there. He's going to be fast enough. That's going to put him up into 10th place.
Still less than 4 minutes to set a time. Should note that Burke, after we've seen that outlap attempt, spun his car again on his third lap. Only up one more lap to improve his time. Christopher, meanwhile, in P7 in car 7, knocked to the bottom of the board to around 8th because up to the top of the board, Paul Waldridge and Christopher Matricion all of a sudden as well is nearly on the pole. Beard is up to second now, just all of a sudden, as all the times continue to cycle on forward as the cars get faster and faster.
They will, and we are really in a lovely happy hour sort of situation for these cars where the temperature's just right after you get going for about a lap or two. So they're nice and racy as we see Owen McLaughlin here going across the line, and he is going to come across with the 33.2. That will improve his time, excuse me. And so, or it would. I think he has an incident point there, yeah.
Yes. Now here's the main thing with this type of race. How important is track position in an event such as this to make sure, okay, I'm going to have a chance to be able to be up in the top 5, say, to be starting where Brian Greenlee, Tyler Gore, or David Hall are on the board?
I don't think it's going to be the most important we've ever seen because this isn't a traditional road course. With these open wheel cars on the high banks, you're going to see drafting, you're going to see that sort of oval mentality come into it a lot. But I don't want to be qualifying any farther down than about 8th place out of fear of losing that front pack. Because if you lose that front pack, then I think it's very easy to slip down the order and to never come back. So if I'm these drivers, I'm trying to focus on that, doing the best I can, but knowing if I'm in the top 5, top 10 or so, I will at least be in a good position to be able to challenge for a win.
See some other drivers cross the stripe. Brian Beard coming across the line for his 4th lap. He had the fastest time in practice. In qualifying, he now has the top time in that as well. A 132.470. Puts him up on top of the board. Beard on the provisional pole with just about less than 2 minutes to go.
Mega lap there from Beard. That's one of the fastest we've seen him turn all day. He was only about 100th lap that he could. And Jenkins coming up there as well, not saying no to anything. So this is going to be fun between our two championship rivals here.
And Diego Asensno's a 132.3, and as you can probably tell, does not put him up the board. If that stuck, that might have been a record someplace. Instead, he's going to still be inside the top 5. Justin Kirby, meanwhile, looking up a time, and he's been snake bit with luck, it seems, just about every single time we've seen him on the track the past few rounds.
He has just absolutely not able to put in that final closing time that we need to see him do it. As we watch here, Brian Greenlee coming out of NASCAR. Is that NASCAR 4, I believe? Yes, he is coming down the main straightaway here. We're going to see what he can do. He's going to be off his top time there, or he's going to be on his top time there. That will bump him up to 16th place.
Only one driver has not set a time. That is Mike Ellis, who is not elected to come onto the racetrack quite yet. Just about everyone set their times and is getting some practice laps together. Nate Burke, should note, did spin, as we talked about, on his 3rd lap around the track after having to come back out of the pit lane during his 2nd lap attempt. See if this ends up counting or if he's going to put up some extra practice laps. This is a countable lap. Needs to move up by about a full second, 133.3, only up to 11th spot in the dying stages of qualifying. Now, that wraps up things for qualifying. The top qualifiers entering tonight seen Brian Beard at the top of the board, as he'll be looking to carry momentum with the Top Qualifier Challenge, brought to you by D2 Race Designs. They specialize in creating personalized and customized sim racing peripherals, as well as providing the RC community items that make their days at the track more organized and efficient. Thanks to the season's top qualifier, will win a customized button box. All thanks to the kind folks at D2 Race Designs. As just mentioned, Brian Beard came into tonight leading that tally and will get to grow it. Paul Jenkins, second in that tally, keeps up just about with them, 33 points back. Yerk, Burke, and Travis Bennett round out the top 5. Of note, Travis Bennett not in the field tonight after being your top qualifier last race at the Milwaukee Mile. Tonight, the iRacers Lounge Pole Award goes to one Brian Beard, a good 0.2 of a second quicker than his fellow competitors. He'll start on the pole tonight with a 132.470 and look to bring the field to the green flag and try and go 4 for 6 on the season on road courses. How about the rest of the drivers line up? Let's find out right about now. Paul Jenkins enters tonight as your points leader. He'll start in second, looking for a consistent run to keep him within range for the final couple races to hold on to the points lead. Paul Wildridge starts in third, one of his best starting positions this season. The past couple starts with Christopher Tricion up to 4th. Diego Sensinel starts in 5th position with Justin Kirby in 6th. Row 4, Jeff Wupker, and Takashi Kita is back in the field. He has 2 top 5s on the season. He'll start P8. Christopher Richards and Andy Yerk round out your top 10.
Nate Burke able to qualify that car in P11, followed by Chris Stouffer in P12. Owen McLaughlin coming on the inside of row 7 in 13th place. David Hall in 14th. Tyler Gore in 15th. Brian Greenlee in 16th. And then Mike Ellis, as we said, not setting a time to round out the field in 17th position.
That's a look at your starting grid for tonight. Again, 42 laps the distance this evening. That's 150 miles on the track tonight. We do have one spotlight driver this evening. That's Paul Wildridge, who'll be starting tonight's race in P3, the number 67 machine. He had a very strong race at Sonoma, battled inside the top 5 just about the whole entire day, and been looking to try and find his way onto the podium tonight here at Daytona International Speedway. Spotlight driver is brought to you by Midwest Simulations. You watch the track, watch the rest. Use the promo code THROWBACK for $5 off a set of their Spotlight's visual spotting system. Find out more at MidwestSim.com. Drivers just about all set to get racing for the Grand Prix of Lake Lloyd. Brian Beard and Paul Jenkins, your top 2 drivers in the standings, control the field. Pace truck is off. Drivers in full speed. Green flag is out. We're underway.
Great jump there from Brian Beard, really able to get the power down as you see Paul Jenkins trying to slide in behind him. That's Wildridge and Mastrissen coming in 1-2. Hopefully everybody's going to be able to get through this really difficult turn 1 nice and easy, and it looks like they do, so everybody's playing it nice and clean here at the beginning of this race.
No major mistakes so far as many of the drivers go single file as they go through the horseshoe. Of course, this infield section so technical and so difficult, with so many chances for incidents with how tight it can be, just about a car length and a half wide for much of the section.
It is so difficult, and anytime you drive this track on the sim, it makes me appreciate the guys who do the 24-hour race where you're passing all the way through this. But as we get going here, Beard already pulling out to about a half a second lead over Paul Jenkins as we come through that second danger zone, that exit off of the infield section onto the high banks. And then this is where this starts to get interesting as we transition from a traditional road course onto a high banked oval where drafting is going to be as a premium. And you can see that right there as Christopher Mastrissen trying to line up a move on Paul Wildridge.
Wildridge giving him the space to go on the outside, backing off as they go into the bus stop for the first time. Already a good second behind your top 2 cars, however, with all the scrapping, everybody getting through the bus stop cleanly, it looks like. No, not too much curbing, not too much grass taken in that regard. But Beard and Jenkins have already taken off and away, going into NASCAR Turn 4 and off to the front stretch for the first time.
That's that sort of pack mentality that I was talking about. Yes, this is an open wheel race, so we're not going to be able to see bump drafting as Jenkins moves out to the outside here. Maybe going to try to go for a move around Beard. He's going to go for the over-under, thinks better of it. No, but that's going to pull him back into the clutches of Christopher Mastrissen there. But no, as I was saying, this isn't a traditional NASCAR race around here where you hear phrases like bump drafting and that kind of thing. As Mastrissen goes up the inside, comes into Jenkins.
And that could have championship ramifications. Major missing to the braking zone. Jenkins falling down the pylon. Several cars having to go in the grass. A couple more end up hitting the 19 machine. And major championship implications as Jenkins to the very back of the field as a result. Take a look at this.
You can see here Mastrissen just coming in as Jenkins and Beard go too wide. Mastrissen's going to get really, really nice on the brakes, able to brake nice and late and lightly there as they come through that first turn complex. They're going to come here, snake all the way through. Mastrissen is just going to misjudge that apex and come right into the side of Paul Jenkins, sending him around. Then there you can see he's going to get collected as Burke has to go wide, going to get hit there. I think that's Brian Greenlee that tagged a little bit of him. So absolute disaster for Mastrissen and most particularly Paul Jenkins.
Yeah, take a look at some of these cars here. Greenlee with a little bit of wing damage. Said he couldn't get the car wound up. Jenkins got away with some damage and more contact already. Believe that's Mike Ellis, and Jenkins is now spinning it again into the grass. Paul Jenkins in the 17 having a disastrous lap.
This is absolutely the worst case scenario for Paul Jenkins as he takes a toe into the pits. You can see it here as we're going to watch it on the replay. Jenkins and Greenlee just getting into each other, and Jenkins just having to slam on the brakes and going around.
It was Ellis who took the toe because Ellis, as you've seen on that shot, went straight hard right after that into the safer barrier. His day may be done. Christopher Richards also had to pull a toe in that lap as well. As you can tell, Ellis did not put in any qualifying laps. The Fossey car hard into the fence.
My guess is that's going to end his day, as now Christopher Mastrissen also looks like not a toe, but just coming in to get some repairs on that car after he was absolutely banged up. As we're going to jump back up to P3. This is a great little battle happening here between, that is Takashi Kita and Justin Kirby.
And Kita on board with him in the number 30 machine, back in the field tonight. Top 5 race car at the moment. Has already gained 4 positions from the drop of the green flag. Keep track of your favorite drivers and teams. Be sure to go to gsrc.tv to keep up with the live timing and scoring for tonight's race. Because this 30, he's been on the move tonight.
He really has, as he is up 4 positions, as we just heard from race control. Both of those incidents involving Paul Jenkins there at the beginning under review, so penalties could be levied here.
Yeah, because here's the thing, gonna be huge for the points, and big battle for second. Already almost 2 seconds back, but Justin Kirby with the draft gets on by. He has the purple lap with a 1:32.9 with the draft.
That draft proven to be absolutely mega here, as Kirby's now going to set his sights on Brian Beard, who's already 1.8 seconds ahead of him. But Takashi Kita not able to let up behind there on the Diego Sensinos, as you see him really starting to put the screws to him coming through that international horseshoe. We're going to see what he can do through this infield section, but watch for him on the high banks, as I think that may be the best place for him to make a move.
And I know there were a few drivers who were happy to see this driver back in the field tonight. Has been very competitive, as you can tell so far. But here's the thing which is going to be important. For drivers, if they make too many mistakes here, let's say, or over push on these tires, there's not a lot of leeway if they have to, say, come in if they have an incident or burn up the tires completely. You'll only have 2 sets in the pits completely. In other words, just for your scheduled stops. Here comes the 30, looking for his scheduled move in the bus stop, and does it.
Really, really nice move there from Kita, just absolutely taking as much advantage of the draft as possible. And you're right, Justin, and we heard some of the drivers talking about before the race just how tricky it's going to be. As you see, Sensinos now starting to close back up on Kita, maybe trying to get that into turn 1. You've got to be careful with these tires, because if you push too hard at the beginning of a stint, they will fall off and you will be slipping and sliding near the end of your stints.
Black flag to Christopher Mastrissen from his incident with Paul Jenkins. He will have to come down and serve a penalty. He is 15th on the racetrack. No move in this fight, but ramifications are coming into play from that incident that could have a major impact on the championship standings and evaporate Paul's lead, I should say, in front of Brian Beard if he can't recover.
It will, and Mastrissen currently lapping in 15th, about 64 seconds behind Brian Beard. So ostensibly, that's not going to hurt him too much, as he's pretty much stuck back in that position to begin with. Jenkins, the one who is suffering most, down 12 spots on the day, and I don't have my calculator in front of me, but I got to think that's going to close up that gap to Brian Beard all kinds of fast.
And he's still about 5 seconds away from the next car, and Brian Greenlee, then another 5 seconds to David Hall. The nearest pack is a good 13 seconds or so up the road. In other words, this is going to be one of the most difficult drives he's had yet. Speaking of difficult drives, here comes a difficult battle now to hold off. Kita with the run, side by side of the bus stop, a little bit dodgy as Kirby holds on.
Kirby's just showing Kita his rear wing there, and that's going to open him up to Diego Acesnos to be able to really suck up into that draft. He's going to get a great run here coming out of NASCAR 4. Will probably be able to make the move coming down into turn 1, but we'll have to see what they can do as Kita also gaining back up on Justin Kirby as this draft just playing more and more as Kita now moves to the outside coming into 1.
That's exactly what Beard wants, to try and break the draft here as Kirby hard to the inside, trying to hold on to the braking zone, and does. Kita with the up and under, can't get it back in for the inside. Good defense there from Justin Kirby so far in this scrap. Should note they will have lap traffic coming up because that penalty the 19 had to serve. They're already in front of Brian Beard.
And that'll certainly make things very interesting if they catch traffic at the wrong time. And by that, I mean in this infield section. So that will be another storyline to watch as the race goes through, as Brian Greenlee dives into the pits, repairing a little bit of that wing damage that we noticed early on. That's going to throw him off cycle, but clearly just noticing he doesn't have the speed with the damage.
So that stop off and away. He's in 14th, but this battle's still progressing a little bit. These cars seem to gain a lot of time with the help a bit of that slipstream in NASCAR 1 and 2 especially. But the technical part of the track has been where Brian Beard has carved these drivers apart, similar to what he's done at tracks like Road America and Sonoma in recent rounds.
No, very much so, and it's going to be something we're going to have to watch as this goes along, is the draft really just playing into it. It's one of the things that makes this track so fascinating, is that half of it is a road course, half of it is a massive super speedway where the draft is absolutely unprecedented. So it makes for some, frankly, fantastic races. You can see it here. That's Takashi Kita just gaining on Justin Kirby coming down the main straight like no one's business.
No send that time, but here's the main thing. If they don't scrap too hard, they can potentially use the 19 of Matricion if they can get up to him as of an ability to draft up to the race leader. The key thing is, if they don't fight and hold each other up here.
Very much so, and frankly, if I'm Justin Kirby and Takashi Kita, I'm going to want to play a little bit of leapfrog and try to use that to get myself pulled up to Brian Beard as quickly as possible, because if they just continue playing along like this, it's not going to help them, and Beard is going to be able to pull out ahead.
You mean like similar to, say, some of those official races where, for those who don't know, with the modern chassis, some of the wintertime series for Indycars do come to Daytona, so similar to that.
They do indeed, as back in the field there, Paul Wildridge just spun coming out of turn 6, and that's going to plummet him down the order. Looks like he's able to keep going back under his own power into 7th. But yes, you are very correct in that regard, Justin.
Defensive line for Justin Kirby in the bus stop that time. They lost a couple tenths with all of that defensive line maneuvers too. So it's looking like they're going towards the first point where the logic is try and stay in a line, but it almost likes, again, they need to go with that second logic to try and go back and forth to carry the draft, because in that regard, that was, when thinking back, the quicker way to break the toe and break the pack and maintain speed compared to the single file, which was a couple tenths slower. Here comes the switch now for Kita. Will Kirby try and fight back on this? Of course he does. Hard to the inside, squeezes up, nearly pushes the 30 off track.
Kirby just getting his elbows out here tonight, really anxious to prove a lot, and not letting Kita have any of that line coming into that turn 1. But a little bit of lockup there from Kita coming through the International Horseshoe, but that actually helps him, pushes him up the order, pushes him up the track a little bit, as he's going to maybe try to make a move. No, he's going to be early on the brakes there, back off of it, and try to make a move going into bus stop.
More trouble for a spotlight driver, and he's taking an extra car with him. A second driver is off in that same section. There's the 67 of Paul Wildridge. Also had a secondary car come off the track, I believe, in Burke. So a couple drivers with some trouble. Take a look.
You can see it here. Wildridge just starting through that little S's section. He's going to get a little bit wide there, tries to get under the power, and he just clips that inside curbing, gets himself spun around into the wall. He starts to back up. Now thinks better of it, turns it around, puts the power down, starts to move on out, and waiting for that other contact. As there goes Jenkins by, that's going to be the one to help him out.
Jenkins actually locked it up. The reference to Burke was actually in the International Horseshoe right after that, where I believe he actually overran the corner and went off into the grass after seeing what happened to the left side of the track. And when it comes to road course racing, if you have a distraction, it can mess up your braking zone.
Very much so. You'd be surprised about it. It's here we're jumping back up to Kita as an Cessnos as they start to dive back in through the infield section. That gap holding at about a half a second between Stouffer behind them. But once again, Kita able to close up through International Horseshoe and then able to Constantina back out. We'll have to see what he can do coming in here. Maybe he knows he's better on the brakes than Kirby, but we'll see.
We talked a bit about the fuel window and the strategy window, 14 to 16 laps. At this point, the amount of fall-off, well, there hasn't been too much for some of the drivers, like Brian Beard, but these cars, they've fallen off by a second with how hard they've been fighting here, DJ.
They have. You're seeing the effects of really over pushing these tires. Yes, temperatures are going to cool down and that's going to help them, but this is an incredibly abrasive surface and it really, really loves to chew up the tires. So this massive battling by Kirby and Kita, I have to think is going to hurt them in the long run. They're going to have to come in earlier on that window, maybe even lap 13, as they are just dropping time.
Keep in mind, they burn a gallon a lap. 81% is the fuel limit tonight for this race. Kita losing some time in the bus stop that time. They're starting to actually gain some time now that they haven't scrapped for the past couple laps, should note. And, of course, the lap traffic in the 19 Matrician has kept up with Brian Beard as well. So at this point as a driver still, with knowing how big these scraps have been, what's kind of going through your head knowing that, oh, hey, we got to come down in a minute or so? Or about a couple minutes, rather.
My biggest thing now is just keeping my head down and keeping focus. We've seen guys that are veterans of
trouble!
the series.
Justin Kirby is around. Justin Kirby spins it from second.
And the Kirby curse strikes again in International Horseshoe.
Just about every single time Kirby seems to have a podium locked up or even a race win, stuff like this happens. It's happened for about four or five straight rounds, mind you.
It has indeed, and for the record, that is a very easy corner to do that. It's very deceptive. The track actually crowns away from you. It crowns off the side, so you get off camber if you try to take that traditional outside wider line through there. And if you're not very sensitive on the throttle, it is very easy to do exactly what Justin Kirby just did. So we'll have to see if he's able to fight back here at all, but being about 5 seconds back from Diego Cessnos now, that's going to put him out of the range of any sort of draft whatsoever. The only good thing is he can maybe try to be a little softer on his tires, but I got to imagine he didn't do him any favors by spinning him up like that.
As a matter of fact, Christopher is just about inside the draft of the number 43 machine as a result of that. Now the big question mark becomes, what happens to that scrap for second? Kita's in that spot, yes, now +6, but can they now try and draft their way up now that it's only 2 cars potentially scrapping for that spot compared to 3 cars with Kirby trying to hold on to that point?
Well, they very well may be able to, because Kirby was the one that we were really seeing blocking Kita from doing anything at all and trying to get forward. So maybe Kita and Cessnos here are going to play this a little bit more savvy and use both cars to get forward. We'll have to see how it plays as Cessnos pulls himself in a little bit closer to Kirby.
Paul Jenkins, an early pit stop. Shockingly just now, GJ. 10 laps is the farthest the 17 car went your points leader. Going off cycle, that's about 4 laps earlier than projected, should know.
It's a really interesting call from Jenkins. I have a lot of questions about it, if I'm honest, because I don't think he'll be able to make it to the end on that. He may be able to. He could do a 15 and a 15 and get himself there, a 16 and 16. But he's basically committing himself to a super, super fuel-save strategy on the last 2. So Jenkins obviously just not liking something in the car, wanting to get a change. We'll have to see how he plays this, but he's going to have to really, really hope he can tuck up in the draft with some people and save some fuel around the NASCAR corners here.
He was actually losing some time as the run went on. In fact, struggling to draft up. Speaking of drafting up, Ascent's Nose is taking back P2 at the area of the racetrack from Kita. See that on the pylon. Back and forth they go right now for second spot. In fact, Kita takes the spot back, heading off into turn 1 and back inside the infield towards the kink.
Kita's sort of playing the Justin Kirby line here of just not wanting to give that position up. And all the while that's been happening, Brian Beard now up to 4-second gap in front. So not really as effective as they may hope this to be. I think they need to start working.
As this has all been going on, these two drivers have been scrapping a decent amount. This is Owen McLaughlin up +5 in the 90 machine, +6 for Tyler Gore, who's been having some bad luck for the past couple weeks, including having a rough race at the Milwaukee Mile. Both of these cars scrapping for P8 at the moment.
You could see Gore there just flicking this way and back as we ride on board with him here. He's got a bit of a run. He may try something. He's going to go for an outside over-under line, try to get a better exit off the corner. But there you see McLaughlin just slowing down a little bit at the apex, forcing him to back off. But if we can stay on board here, you will see the effects of this draft and just how much he is able to close up. That seems like it's a lifetime away, but watch it. By the time that they get going, Gore is going to be able to be right up his gearbox.
Take a listen to this for a second. Not quite as close for the bus stop, but might get there by turn 1.
Very much so, and I have to say I love the sound of these old cars. They are just so fun. As there you see Owen McLaughlin playing a little fun there, trying to get that draft to be broken. Not working. There you can see the closing speed from Gore. He's going to dive to the outside, try to hold it as McLaughlin's going to hold the inside line. Gore is going to be ahead when they cross the stripe, but as they come through the tri-oval, that's going to benefit McLaughlin just a little bit. Gore's going to try to make it work on the outside. He gets in front, and he's got it. Can he hold it coming through? It certainly looks that way. Gore up into 8th place.
And a good pass by Tyler Gore. He started back in 15th position after struggling in practice and qualifying. And now trying to run away from McLaughlin, who struggles through the exit of the International Horseshoe as they go off to the dog leg. Still about 25 seconds or so behind your race lead. But one of the better scraps that has been going on, give or take, for about 5 laps before they have to come down for their scheduled stop.
The pit stops are really going to be an interesting thing here as we see it, as we jump back on board here, watching Takashi Kita and Diego Cessnos coming down into the bus stop now. Cessnos right up his gearbox. That's about 0.3 of a second back. And as we saw, the closing speed here off the bus stop is going to be insane. This could be the chance for Cessnos.
Could be a huge opportunity. We are approaching that window, and based on the numbers, there might be some split calls here. To the inside defensive line, Kita doesn't duck into the pits. Ascent's Nose ducks to the outside to try and take it at the stripe. Kita, though, has the preferred line with a better chance to break into the corner. Diego Ascent's Nose gives him back the bottom side, loses them another second in the process, I should say. Of note, Nate Burke had to pit a second time after having a scheduled stop a lap ago. He'll now come out just behind these cars and right towards that battle or so between some of the drivers like Andy Yerk and Jeff Wupker.
So Burke going to be one of those lap traffic boys to keep an eye on here as Kita, once again through this infield section, this really seems to be his specialty, able to pull away and get a good distance here. But Cessno's just able to keep up behind him when they get onto the NASCAR corners. Now, of note, Justin Kirby, a full 8.5 seconds back from these guys, so that spin still just coming back to haunt him.
Yeah, 138.4 last time by, just struggling with the pace. Trouble for Andy Yerk. We talked about him close to Wupker. He had trouble from P7, has just been jumped by Gore and McLaughlin. And the number 27, there's trouble in the West Horseshoe this time for the player's car.
As we jump and watch a replay here, just going on, getting the power down a little bit too early. That is a corner, that is the West Horseshoe. Almost a sort of reverse parabolica. It opens very wide at the beginning and then tightens up as you go through it. Deceptively difficult. So, I've said this before, I've made that mistake many a time.
Major mistake from Brian Beard moments ago as we were showing that. A slowdown in the bus stop. has shrunk down his lead from 4 seconds to 1 second. That's exactly what the 30 and the 6 needed.
Takashi Kita smelling blood in the water now, really just putting the pedal down, trying to close up to Brian Beard. That gap now down to a 1.2 second gap or thereabouts. This is going to come into play big time as Kita now in the draft range of Beard, and this is about to get fun.
And of course, now Beard doesn't have the lap traffic behind him to help with the draft either. Could get interesting with the scrap through NASCAR 1 and 2 off to the bus stop. This is right at the expected mark for the pit window. They can go up to 16 laps as talked about at the top of the broadcast tonight. 1.3 seconds the gap. Beard pulling an extra 10th from the infield.
Able to get a little bit of a gap, but this is where Kita can start to claw back a little bit. Now, something to keep in mind about all of this, Brian Beard has been running in mostly clean air the entire night. He has not been able to fuel save around the big oval. Kita, Cessnos, these guys have been able to, so they may be able to eke out one more lap over Brian Beard, and that could be a deciding factor here.
Could be pretty significant. Beard, though, took the bus stop extremely well. So quick, he gained an extra 3 tenths and just about broke the draft here. Can he go the extra lap? Looks like so. Cessnos behind them, able to make the pass back now as they try and go for that slipstream method we talked about a little ago.
And it looked like crossing the stripe there, Cessnos was going to have it, but Kita able to fight back again and hold it as we do have our first pitter out of the main pack, Justin Kirby, coming in here on lap 15.
So that's the 43 who was ducked off. He was about 15, 16 seconds back and losing tons of time. Jeff Wubker comes in with him. Expecting these drivers up at the front, though, to come in this time by, which could be very crucial here. Of course, we talked about the pit strategy tonight. How interesting could this pit entry be? 55 miles an hour is the speed limit, and they, of course, have to take that access road that does have that wall on the right side.
Yeah, the pit entry is surprisingly sort of uncharacteristically difficult. It's a wide open entry, a standard sort of D-oval entry, but because you are coming in from such high speeds coming around NASCAR 4, you have to get on the brakes just right to make it work. But that exit is where it can catch you out big time. A lot of guys try to gain time coming through there only to smack the wall, so we're going to have to see who's the smart ones to be able to keep it all 4 wheels on the track.
Majority of the field has now come in. You've seen Paul Waldridge, your spotlight driver, come in and out. Now, Beard & Co. coming out of NASCAR 4. Expecting the peel off this time. Gap is down to about 1 second. Here they go. Beard a little bit slower on the entry. Kita backs it up underneath the speed limit. Everyone makes it to the stripe in decent shape.
And now this is going to be a battle of the virtual pit crews to see who can service these cars faster and who can hit their marks the best as we see these top 3 runners coming in. Kita the first to peel into his pit stall in the back there. Brian Beard pulling in right ahead of you. And that's Diego Cessnos pulling in the middle of it too.
We've seen a little bit of a backup from Cessnos. He overran his stall a little bit, so going to lose some time as the number 6. Off goes Beard. Kita comes out very close. Closest he's been since the start of the race, in fact, just about to your race leader. Cessnos lost an extra couple seconds because of his mistake.
So that's going to be good for Takashi Kita. He's not going to have to looking in his rearview mirrors. He's only going to be able to look ahead of him as you see him here. Now remember, it's dark. The track temperature is only 85 degrees, and these tires are going to take a minute to come up to speed. So they've got to tippy-toe through here, the dog leg and through the West Horseshoe. Really make sure that they don't put the power down too early and spin this car.
And you can see that pit lane differential. That does not include how hard they went in the brakes as well, mind you. Kita gained in the lane itself about 6 tenths. He also had a quicker stop in the box and also gained that second or so, being able to send it a little bit more deeper on the brakes just about because Paul, it seemed like Beard backed up on the gas just about to arc it on in.
I think he did. Beard very much aware of what's going on, just trying to play a game of not losing this race, it feels like. And if I'm Brian Beard, that's the way I have to approach it, is I want to take advantage of every point I can, and I don't want to risk throwing away a second-place points position by getting a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pits. So I understand why he took that a little bit more cautiously than other drivers have.
Of note, David Hall with some issues just had to put his car back on the tow truck shortly after his pit stop. Similar situation what we talked about moments ago. Also of note, we mentioned the off-cycle pit stop for Paul Jenkins. He is up to 8th position with the strategy call. Before he pit, he was around 11th spot. So Jenkins gaining some time with that call.
May be able to work out for him, as I say. He's going to need a little bit of help from people. I think he's going to need to find a nice drafting partner to be able to suck up behind and save a little bit of fuel, and that'll really help him. But all is not lost here for Paul Jenkins. He is in damage mitigation mode, but I think he'll be able to walk out of here with at least some decent points based off of his running today.
See a bit of scrap between Wildridge and New York in the backdrop. Your race leaders, though, are still fairly close at the moment. So, going to be interesting how they all shape. Updating the issue with David Hall. Apparently, he didn't hit anything on the fuel window. However, it didn't give him fuel for his race car. That's why the 75 of Hall had to serve a tow now of more than a minute. That's the situation for Hall. His teammate Mike Ellis also already out of the race from an earlier crash. So, at the moment, it's Beard in the lead, Keita in second, Asensnos, Kirby, Stouffer, Wupker, McLaughlin, Jenkins, Wildridge, and York, your top 10.
And Beard really able to just sort of stretch out this advantage. You know, they came out of the pits about a half second apart. Beard able to gap Keita back now about a full second. So he clearly has the pace here. And where I'm watching these lap times, I think it's most prevalent coming out of the bus stop. Beard just has that acceleration point down to a T, and he's really, really able to get a good gap to Keita.
The interesting thing I've noticed, though, is Keita's actually been stronger in the infield section compared to the first run here, where he's been gaining more time on Jenkins before he was losing time to Beard, I should rather say, in this section during the first stint.
That may just be a little bit of driver strategy. He may have been trying to take it back a little bit, and now he knows when he needs to make the quick stops. Is there you see him taking a little bit of a different line there through the West Horseshoe. That is possible just based off of where the grip levels are. He's able to bring 3/10 down through that infield section alone. So you are right, Justin. Really, really good run for Keita in the infield.
And is now Beard, though, its strength has been, he's been much more confident, it seems, for the bus stop to be able to go more full throttle compared to Keita, who's been backing up that section.
He has, and that's really hurt Keita in the prime overtaking place that we've seen diving down into turn one. So Beard able to mitigate that sort of that overtake from him.
See it right there. The risk is, though, he takes a little bit more of the grass, for example. He gets that slowdown again. He's likely losing the lead, and potentially the draft of the 30 that can take him a few laps to recover at least.
It's a very good point, and he's playing a little bit with fire there. As you see Keita now, he's closer up in the draft. He got a better dive out of bus stop. He's able to close it down to about 0.4 of a second. He's got to be careful here. He's going to dive to the outside, maybe put a little pressure on Brian Beard. Not really going to be in a position to make the move, pray tell, but just enough so Beard knows that Keita's always looking for that opportunity.
Thought about at the very least, not able to send it on in. Closest he's been now in the infield section. About 3/4 of a second. And for Keita, the main thing is, again, we talked about some of the decisions to make the move. Do you want to, as a driver, just get the job done immediately and try and defend, or do you want to have the chance to maybe save for a couple laps and then make the move?
My strategy would be try to save for a couple of laps. So if I'm Brian Beard, I may even let him buy in an area that I know, so I can try to save a few gallons of fuel, maybe get on a little bit of a better strategy, because if I'm running full out here, I'm not going to be able to be on that full fuel conserve, and I'm probably going to have to come in a little bit earlier than Takashi Keita.
See a bit of the draft now for Keita, the closest he's been in the bus stop now. No peak, elects to save the fuel this time for the run. Brian Beard, though, hard on the gas. Hit a bit of the grass, though, on the left side of the racetrack. Slows him up a touch. Here comes Keita now for the race lead. Defensive line for Brian Beard. Keita to the outside, Beard to the inside. First lead change of the race as Beard lets Keita try it on the high side.
And look up ahead of them. That's Nate Burke. This could get really nasty coming down into the bus stop, coming down into turn 1. But what it's doing right now is it's giving Kita a little bit of a draft to be able to pull up ahead of Brian Beard. That's going to give him the preferred line. Burke getting out of the way. Beard having to tuck up behind. Kita getting the job done and taking first place into the infield section.
What timing for Kita. Major mistake in the part of the infield in the bar of the bus stop. For Beard to overshoot it on the right side and hit his tires there in the first leg. Now, Kita's in the lead with a chance to try and control the pace. Just about 5 laps away or so from the green light to make it on the gas.
Great move from Kita there. We are on about lap 21, so he's got about 9 laps to go, but able to save fuel for about 5 or 6. I think that'll get him just to where he needs to be in terms of trying to stretch out that tank as much as possible.
Brian Greenlee now out of the race. Had ended up with 14 laps on his stint, but would have needed an additional pit stop to make it in the race. Down to 13 cars running on the racetrack. Paul Jenkins another 4 to 6 laps in the tank before he has to make his scheduled stop. Kita trying to break up a bit of the slipstream now, knowing this is his biggest shot to try and defend here he's had all night. Beard, though, again aggressive in that section.
Beard aggressive, and that's going to give him one heck of a run coming into NASCAR 3. He's going to want to stay right behind the gearbox of Kita for as long as possible, build up the speed, dive out to the outside. Everybody wanting to go on the outside to make that pass move. I think Beard is scored as being in first as they come down to the timing stripe, and we're going to see who can get it into turn 1.
Beard does get the lead lap, but Kita with the preferred line again for the inside. Takashi Kita able to stick it hard, just about hit the tires in fact. Defending hard to the inside. They still have a 5-second cushion to the battle for third on back.
They've got a 5-second cushion, so nothing really too much to worry about it. And as you can see, they're coming in. Kita really doing a good job of making that car wide on the apex of the corners, forcing Brian Beard to take a little bit of a different line as they dive down here into the West Horseshoe. Beard taking a different line, trying to find some grip, trying to find some area to go. He's got a better run out of the Horseshoe. He's going to be close enough to make that draft work. We're going to have to see if Beard chooses to back off, save a little bit of fuel coming into the bus stop, or if he's going to make the move.
Have to keep an eye on this. Kita has been a bit more on the defensive side all race, as we've seen, once he's gotten this cleaner air. Takashi Kita, lots of experience in various different types of sim racing, including in open wheel action. A driver who has finished in top 10 in points in several races, as well has won a couple different iRacing Indy 500s in his career for various splits, as well as a good run in the Daytona 24 hours at this circuit. Now, Beard to the outside once again, looking to try and make the move once again through NASCAR 4. Again, Beard looking like he's going to get the lead lap, but Kita again with the preferred line with 20 laps to go this time.
It's really going to be who's more confident on their brake pedal here as they dive down into turn 1. This sweeping left-hander. It looks like it's going to be Kita. Beard going to try back for the over-under. Not going to quite have it, but he's going to be right up his gearbox. He's going to be not close enough back, I think, to make a move here. Yep, Beard just going to hold it back by, let it all go, and see what happens. Just trying to let the race come to him for Brian Beard.
Yeah, this is going to be truly testing some of the emotions, but at the same time, this is a chance to test maybe what may work here, depending on how things cycle out here, because it was talked about specifically with the Lionheart's HyperX Summer Series, where it was similar drafting to this with the Ford GTEs at Indianapolis, where there was a move tested with about 2 to go by a driver to see if they can get the line to work on the outside. Then they did the actual move on the final lap at the checkered flag, in fact, to win that race. It's almost looking like Beard's trying to test this out and knows, or at least is trying to see how close do I need to be able to get the edge of the stripe if it comes down to it.
Well, and the way he's running with the exit he gets out of the bus stop, and whoo, what an exit he just got right there. This is his best run yet, it looks like. That I think Beard knows he can be in the lead at the stripe, so if it does come down to that white flag lap, he will be able to be leading when the checkered flag falls. It's just coming into turn 1 that he's struggling with.
And you can see here's the main thing too. Kita's also been very good at the start of the trial on forward. In fact, Kita a couple times has gone in the lead lap with that preferred speed with how he's been doing now since the exit of the infield, especially for the past few laps in the cleaner air. Now the curious thing is, on top of this, what do you do if you're, say, Beard? Do you just continue to push on and try and go to the end of the field run at this point? Because you still have an error of 7 to 9 laps on the tank, give or take.
Well, I think for Brian Beard, it's going to depend on what his tires are doing. If he's, not really feeling them, if they're starting to go away from him, I'm going to start looking at coming into the pits, I would say, within another 4 laps, maybe try to go for an undercut here on Takashi Kita. But basically, I want to try to go off strategy of whoever I'm racing against, because I think that's going to put them ahead if they're able to do it.
I know there's the counter argument too on top of this, and the reason to bring this up, or the idea is, usually the lighter the car, the faster it goes. That was what won Scott Ramworth the last race at the Milwaukee Mile when he had to come down. And a huge mistake from Beard in the backdrop. That's a slowdown.
Oh, that's going to drop him back, way back from Takashi Kita there, as we're going to jump here on a replay.
Huge mistake, and take a look at the cones on the left side of the track.
Oh, just absolutely destroying that cone like it insulted his mother, and running across the grass there, getting a slowdown penalty that probably about a second or 2 seconds. Looks like it's about a second from where it dropped him back. So Beard now has to do all that work again and still has to try to get past Takashi Kita.
And all of that, Sentinel's actually gained about another second or so because he's coming. Remember him? He would have been in this scrap too if it wasn't for his mistake in the pit road. He's now passing by lap traffic and gaining time with all this.
He is indeed, and for Diego Cesnos, he wants that lap traffic on the tri-oval because it'll really, really help to push him up through the field. Only about 2.5 seconds back of Brian Beard, so certainly enough room to be able to make something happen, especially if Beard is maybe in his own head. That's the second mistake we've seen him make coming through that bus stop section. So if I'm Diego Cesnos, I have to be thinking about that I want to just keep driving cool and collected and let Beard make another mistake.
Might have an extra car to draft off of in about a few moments or so if you can continue to push the tempo and then use that to maybe get up to Beard. Beard doesn't have that assistance of the draft now either, just maybe the tail end of it at the very most. It now comes down to, even for a sense knows, your driver ability essentially on the road course.
Very much so. That's the area where you've got to make up the time. Is where can you be late on the brakes? Where can you gain speed? Where can you do everything? So that's going to be all down to Diego Cesnos. As you see there, Nate Burke trying to take a little bit of advantage of him, even though he is, by my counting, a lap down.
He is. In fact, he's the last car running on the racetrack. Despite that, actually gained about an extra couple tenths. With that bit of a maneuver there. Expecting the green light to make it on field this upcoming time by. Expecting Paul Jenkins and maybe Justin Kirby among those drivers who take that call. They would be offset, however. Kirby is still 8.5 seconds back from all this.
And Paul Jenkins making a move right now on Jeff Wubker, who goes wide. That moves him up to 6th place. He has not come into the pits yet, so he obviously trying to stretch out a little bit and get to a normal pit window as possible, having made that early pit stop on lap 10.
As you said for Paul, 16 to get to the end. Still very tight, though. The thing is, he's been doing very good damage control. There's a chance he may get a top 5 still out of this. And still a top 7, let's say, for Wildridge, who had a disastrous first stint.
Very much so, and you're seeing the really good drivers who maybe had a couple of scruffy laps early on, just getting the pedal down and doing it. And truthfully, this drive from Paul Jenkins is vintage Paul Jenkins. This is why he's our championship leader. He has not won a race all year, but he just consistently comes in and no matter what happens, keeps it nice and steady and easy, and that is how you win championships. And so if Jenkins is able to pull out a top 5 here and minimize that bleeding, it is going to go a long way with only 2 races to go.
Be a 12-second gap you have to close in that Airlex machine you see there with Lot Penn Motorsports. Wildridge trying to keep up with the draft as well, with the 17 just can't keep up with it, however, despite having similar tires at the moment by about a 4-lap difference. Lead has closed back up, should know. Brian Beard is back within the draft of Katashi Kita in the middle of the infield right now, about 0.8 of a second back.
Beard really able to make some good progress as they work their way through the infield section now. You're really seeing him just trying to put the pedal down, but he's got to be careful, as we've said. He doesn't want to overburden anything, doesn't want to try to go too hard.
See that now, in fact, right here. So he's back in the drafting range. Matrician again pushing forward again for similar situations we've seen before. I think he'd actually collect a bit of the apron there a little bit there. Would that hurt him for some speed maybe?
Yeah, it's not going to be obviously as much as that slowdown penalty that Brian Beard got, but it is going to take a couple of miles an hour off the final end speed before you break into the bus stop. And you can see it there, Beard able to bring that gap down to 0.4 of a second. Now right up his gearbox coming out of bus stop. I think he's ready to make a move here. He's tired of being in second place.
Coming to 15 laps to go. Kita, defensive to the left side of the track. Beard again with the slipstream on the outside. The silver and red machine trying to get himself clear. Just about got it again, though. Kita with the pole on the shorter distance on the bottom side of the racetrack. Kita leads the lap once again. 15 to go from Daytona.
And Brian Beard going to try to work for a little bit of over-under there. As, oh, you can see with that crane shot just how wonderful of a sequence this is. That left, right, left sweeper section coming off of turn one. Beard trying to find a little bit more grip as we are back to where we were about 5 laps ago with Beard trying to find any way by. What's interesting here is that Beard seems to have that run out of bus stop down so well, but I actually think he closes in too fast. He's not able to really take full advantage of that draft like we saw Kita able to do on Kirby and Acesnos earlier. And so it's almost like Brian Beard's natural ability and natural skill as a driver is coming back to hurt him here because the timing's just wrong on that move coming out of the bus stop.
Then how do you try and fix that timing? Because the tough thing is trying to dial that back to your normal, from your normal marks.
Exactly. It is so difficult to try to change what you do based off of a driver in front of you. As we see it here, you can see him taking a slightly wider line there. I think that may be trying to help it, but he's going to try to close here, really take advantage of it. The biggest thing you have to do is, at least for me, I talk myself through it. I constantly am saying, wait on the brakes, wait on the brakes, wait on the brakes. You see a lot of drivers doing that, and it may have just worked out as here comes Brian Beard on the outside. That slingshot really playing good effort here. He's got the speed. He is ahead of Kita coming into one.
Can he stick it on the high side, however? No, almost cooked the corner. He shuffled back out to P2. Falls back by another 3/4 once again.
Beard just unable to make that turn one work for him. It's really, really heartbreaking because he is driving an incredible race, no other than that.
Yeah, this has been entertaining so far to keep an eye on so far with how they've been scrapping. Still going to be curious how they all play out. Should note Paul Wateridge is now in from the top 5, the top 7 I should say. So the window is now open for final pit stops.
It is, as we watch Wateridge, and something else to keep in mind as we were watching the great battle in front. Paul Jenkins did come into the pits. He made his final pit stop, at least we assume his final pit stop, on lap 26. So that should get him to the end, all things considered.
That was a 10.5. Keep that number in mind. These drivers don't need to technically fill it all the way, though, compared to Jenkins. Big run again from Beard. Much slower for Kita through the bus stop. Actually misses part of the apex. Actually still gains some time out of it.
He does. I think Beard got in his head a little bit, had to back off coming across, not wanting to get that clip and time loss penalty. But now he's got the good run on the draft here as you see him starting to dial it in. Kita just hugging that yellow line, trying to force Beard around the outside. We'll have to see if he can make it work this time around.
Beard just about clear. Kita, though, harder on the send once again. Up and under once ago. And in the in, not able to close up again. Beard, though, again, right up the gearbox for the infield section. Kita, defensive line into the horseshoe.
I think Brian Beard needs to start experimenting here, trying to find a couple of different areas on where to get by, and he may just have it here. 2/10 back, only about a car length. He's got a good run coming into the West Horseshoe. Kita goes defensive. Beard jumps to the outside, going to try for the over-under here. Not going to make it work as Kita just makes that car wide.
Just hasn't worked in the West Horseshoe today. It has worked a couple times in the International Horseshoe. But should note, Stouffer and Yerk have both come in for their final scheduled stops. These drivers coming at 12 laps to go, this time by for their respective pit stops. Stouffer, should note, also has just had to pull a toe after a mistake after his pit box is out of the race. Kita, hard defensive line. Beard pulls under the defensive line. Tight squeeze for the bus stop. Kita lets him go. Brian Beard to the race lead.
And Brian Beard read my mind. We have not seen a lot of people try to make a move down the bus stop, but Brian Beard pulling it off to absolute perfection there, getting a great run out of turn 6 and through NASCAR 1 and 2 to really, really pull off a great move there.
See if Kita can get the run back. Huge burst of speed, 170 miles an hour. Clean air is up to 170. Kita on the outside once again, makes contact. He slides around. Kita can't save it. He bobbles around. Beard avoids damage as Kita with a major mistake.
Kita just trying to get a little bit too aggressive there, and that is going to ruin his race as he has rear wing damage and something obviously wrong with the right as well. We're going to jump back on a replay. You can see it. Kita just trying to take that aggressive line, trying to scare Brian Beard, and Beard having nothing of it, rightly holding his line through 1.
A massive mistake. That incident is now under review according to race control. Somehow, Beard managed to have no damage, if any, maybe at the very least minimal damage from that. He's got a very clean front wing on that race car from it.
He does. Beard looks like he has been able to completely escape any problems from that and firmly places him back into the lead with Diego Acesnos, the only one really able to challenge him here, 2 seconds back.
And Wupker just finished his pit stop service, so the only drivers not to pit yet for their final stops are Beard, Acesnos, Kirby, Kita, and McLaughlin along with Tyler Gore. Beard can push another lap if he wants to have only 10 laps of fuel in the car for the closing stage if he elects to do so. He still has a 2-second cushion. He's going that extra lap once again. So is Diego Acesnos.
The one that I'll be interested to see is if Justin Kirby is able to go an extra lap here, as Beard was able to really tuck up behind Kirby that entire time and just save some fuel. As you see Kirby running Beard running a very fast lap there at a 33.6. That's one of the fastest laps on the track outright, really getting a full use of that clean air and starting to stretch his legs.
Kita and Kirby have come in for their scheduled stops. Speaking of Justin Kirby, he's off and away with a 7.7 second stop. It was 8.8 actually for Kirby, 7.7 for Kita. Kita's actually saved some time, and it's a racing incident. It's been ruled by race control for the incident between the 30 and the 5 moments ago as Kirby crashed out of the pit lane. Justin Kirby with an error mistake.
Oh, the Kirby curse striking again, as that's going to ruin his race. He was having a good recovery drive. You see it here, just so tricky. You want to put the power down, you want to put the speed down. He gets too much of it and just floors it. Looks like he's able to escape with damage. I don't think he hit that wall, so he's going to be fine. Oh, no, we've got director telling us he did indeed hit it, so he will have some damage.
He definitely hit it for sure. It's not cosmetic. We'll have to see if it's mechanical, though, from that type of contact. On the bright side, he's got a car to race with, at least, in Owen McLaughlin. The downside is McLaughlin's about to pit. Either way, he's cycling potentially to 4th. Brian Beard at the end of the racetrack is in. Diego Acesnos is also in. For their scheduled stops, the race leaders have now pit for their final pit stops of the race. This car in the 90 expected to join him this time.
As you can see here, Beard coming in as Acesnos as well, both hitting their marks at the same point. Beard already smoking his tires, wanting to get out there as fast as he can. lights up the rears, gets on his way. That's a 7.6 stop from him and a 7.9 from Accessnos. His Beard is going to hold down that lead, hopefully just going to keep it out nice and smooth through the pit exit. He does indeed, and Brian Beard back into the lead of this race.
Just that little bit extra fuel added in by Accessnos may have just cost him a chance to fight here, because now it's 3 seconds behind the race lead. Beard just needs to keep it on the track without a slowdown.
He does, but as we've seen, he's been prone to it in this race and at this track, so that's not out of the question that he could get it. So we'll have to see what he does. Meanwhile, in the back, as we have our final pitters coming in here, that's Owen McLaughlin coming into the pits. Guess who's up to P5, Justin? It's our good friend, Paul Jenkins.
He actually lost some time from this window, should note, in the 17. Remember last time we talked about it, and he was 2 seconds further up the road. However, here's the interesting part. Do you think he can hold on? Jenkins can, compared to Wildridge, since they're on similar strategies. It's a 2-lap lesser amount of fuel, however. Inside the tank of the 67, you'll see then the backdrop it a little bit here as Beard pulls away in the bus stop a touch.
I think Jenkins has a good potential to hold on. That 2 laps can make a little bit of difference, but as a collected of a driver as Paul Jenkins is, I don't see him making a mistake like going out and trying to put too much heat and too much pressure into those tires and ruining his race. Wildridge only pitted 2 laps after him, so that's not going to make too huge of a difference. The one I would be a little bit worried about is the guy 2 seconds back of these 2 guys, Jeff Wubker, who pitted on lap 30. That 4-lap difference may be enough to make this a little harder for Jenkins.
See how much the draft pulled in for Wildridge, in fact, as well, though. Jenkins needing this finish to try and recover as many points as he can. Remember, started outside front row, was involved in a 2nd lap crash that involved him in the 19 machine after the 19 missed his braking zone into the horseshoe, the international horseshoe, for preference sake. But now, on the outside, one of your spotlight drivers for the evening, Paul Wildridge, not able to complete the pass, backs it up as Jenkins has the defensive line.
Paul Jenkins taking that sort of Takashi Kita line that we saw taken many, many times as we ride on board here with Paul Wildridge. You see Jenkins locking up a little bit. That's not going to make his tires too happy, but he's still able to keep out a nice little gap there to Wildridge, holding it at about a half a second. Hopefully able to turn away and break as much of the draft as possible.
Keep an eye on this fight. Very near identical in terms of the lines. 9/10 of a second was closed in with the draft from Paul Wildridge last time by. So it is potentially possible the 67 can make a move. Jenkins, though, is a little bit cleaner. Infield section at the moment. They'll come up to 8 laps to go this time by. This is again 32 seconds behind your race leader in Brian Beard.
Wildridge is not looking like he has the speed out in NASCAR 2 there to make too much of a move, but he's going to hope to get a good exit out of bus stop, see what he can do here, able to keep the gap nicely. He's going to continue that speed, going to get a little bit of a close there from Wildridge, bringing that gap down slightly. I don't think he's going to have enough to really make a move here, but he is able to close up massively.
Good burst of speed again. Wildridge got the position at the stripe last time by. This time by, he will get that spot. But Jenkins again prefer line, nearly scrubbing the wall as Wildridge as Jenkins continues to just hug that yellow line. Here's the thing, you mentioned Jeff Wubker. They do that 1 or 2 more times, there's a chance Wubker actually gets there with a shot to scrap here with these guys.
Over the course of the past 2 laps, Wubker's been able to close a full second on these guys, so they've got to be careful, especially if I'm Jenkins. I may want to look at trying to do that leapfrog situation like we talked about earlier in the race to try to pull away from Wubker if I can. But I also think that once you put that visor down that you just kind of wanted to go full speed ahead, so I don't blame a guy for saying, you know what, I'm going to let this guy go by me.
Should note that Owen McLaughlin has put his car on the tow truck after he demolished his machine by crashing and coming into the infield. So the 90 machine is currently off the racetrack and out of the race car after a mistake that could cost him a top 10 finish. Only 2 other drivers are 1 lap down at the moment, as you see on the left side of your screen after that mistake. Still with the scrap on screen. It's about 0.4 of a second separation. Wupker is still about 1.4 seconds back of the next car in this group.
He is, and that gap grew a little bit coming out of the bus stop. I think he's starting to lose a little bit of touch with him here. I have it down to our back to about 1.7, but once again, Wildridge starting to get a draft. He's going to think better of it, I think, this time, maybe backing off just a little bit, not trying to push his advantage, seeing if he can maybe get onto Jenkins in another part of the track. As we've seen, making that pass into turn one is just incredibly difficult.
Yeah, just not even close enough to try and even think about the move as well, either in the infield. It just seems, again, if you want the spot on the line, you want it on the outside. If you want to try and hold on to the spot, you're fine as long as they don't clear you into the corner, just about, it seems. Again, this could come down to exactly where the run comes into play between these cars for a top 5 spot.
It very well could, and Paul Wildridge is a smart enough driver, I think, to kind of be looking at that and starting to think it ahead as we are here with 7 laps to go. So that scenario really starting to enter these drivers' minds of, okay, if I'm going to have a shootout to the stripe, when do I want to position myself? When do I want to back off? When do I want to do everything?
Taking a look at the run towards the bus stop once again. Just seems Wildridge is starting to have that struggle in that section. That time he actually clipped the grass a touch. That's going to lose him some time. Not a slowdown, but enough to force him off the gas and lose the draft.
Yeah, that'll drop him back to about a full second back, and that'll pull Jeff Wupker about the same gap back to him. So Wupker hoping to take advantage here. If I'm Paul Jenkins, I'm breathing a little bit easier, and I can just start to run a little bit more of the race that I want to run here and not have to worry about taking the defensive line.
Wildridge was just able to hold on barely to the draft. Wupker just couldn't take advantage, however. You see 1.1 to 1.2 seconds. Just not enough time gained to really be able to fully be in the group. Wupker in that spot. He's been stuck in around 7th the entire race, it seems, the 97.
He has. He started 7th. He's currently in 7th, so that just kind of seems to be his lucky number here tonight at Daytona. As you watch him go through here, West Horseshoe trying to figure something out. It looks like the gaps are going to stay pretty much the same, but we'll have to see if Paul Wildridge has anything left in the tank here for these final laps.
Just touch bit for the draft once again. Keep in mind the points numbers. Winner last race got 150 total race points. That did not include, of course, the qualifying points, which is 30 bonus points for the pole. That in case going to Paul Jenkins's, or I should say Brian Beards' direction. Then, of course, you have the lead lap points coming in, as well as whoever leads the most laps coming into play, that being Beard as well. So with the points calculations, essentially, it's at least with where Jenkins is running at the moment, at the minimum about maybe 65 points, give or take unofficially, maybe 45 or so, that he'd potentially lose if he finishes where he is.
Well, and if that happens, that is going to wildly change this race with 2 races to go here, both ovals, so that is going to be a little bit more interesting. But when we go to an oval track, there is the consideration that something may happen. Paul Jenkins could be taken out in a situation. As you see him locking up the brakes there, that's going to pull up Paul Wildridge a little bit more, pull him back within 0.7 seconds of him. We could be looking at a run here from Wildridge.
Yeah, could be tight. And this could be crucial because it's 5 points per position separation. We mentioned those numbers. Again, that's a rough estimate. For the true number, this spot could become the difference between if Jenkins can have enough of a cushion to hold on despite no wins, but with his consistency for 2 more races compared to, say, 5 less points or even 10 less if Wupker gets there.
He could. There's a billion combinations and permutations that we can be looking at with this, but one way or the other it is going to serve up as Chicagoland and Charlotte as 2 of the best races of the year, with all eyes focused on Brian Beard and Paul Jenkins.
Should note McLaughlin is back in the cockpit, but has to get significant damage repair, looking like he is done for the night. Wildridge not done with this fight though, and now he's starting to save a little bit. Wildridge actually lifted hard off the gas that time. Do you think Wildridge has to save fuel here with this fuel number? He did have a shorter pit stop, only 9.2.
He may be trying to save a little bit. I also wonder if there's a little bit of not wanting to show his hand quite yet. If he knows that he's got the timing right coming out of bus stop with coming up on 3 laps to go, he may not want to be in the lead of this scrap. He may want to stay behind Jenkins to be able to try to get the nose over the line in the draft coming out of the bus stop, or it very well could be a combination of the two things that it's just working out for Wildridge. But either way, it's setting up a great close to this. We'll have to keep an eye on him to see what he does.
And as well, Wupker, because here's something we haven't talked about, the potential of a double toe.
Very true. If Wupker is able to close up enough behind Wildridge, get the double toe, it's going to be really spectacular. You can see it here riding on board with Jeff Wupker. They're not quite close enough to really get that. I think Paul Wildridge needs to close up a little bit more to Paul Jenkins to make that really play out. But if he's able to close that gap, get a double toe around him, we could see these guys going 3 wide.
Now a car to dodge, though. That's Nate Burke, who had a mistake in the bus stop. Seen that with the flicker of green that was up the racetrack and that on board. And now, out of the way he goes. Not going to hold up this fight. Wildridge, will he hold up the momentum he had before? Yes, he's saving fuel once again. Wupker, however, got the worst end of that just about. I think he actually had to move up to the top line, and yes, indeed he did, to try and avoid Burke and give him some space back on the racetrack.
Well, I was going to commend Burke there on a really good job of staying out of the leader's way and being heads up about that, but kind of messing it up there at the end for everybody. But now you see there comes Wupker coming back up. It's going to get a lot closer here. He's only about a half a second back of Wildridge. This is about to get fun.
Let's get really fun. 2 laps to go this time by. Wupker harder on the brakes this time. Nearly got to the gearbox of Wildridge, in fact, in the West Horseshoe. To the out they go for the infield section. Wupker with the chance to potentially send it. Wildridge with a bit of a wider exit, however, to NASCAR 1.
It is, and that's going to save Wildridge just a little bit. I think he's able to carry a little bit more momentum, but here comes Wupker coming on strong. He has that pedal all the way to the floor. I think he's going to try to move a Brian Beard here, maybe take a dive down into bus stop. No, he's feathering the throttle a little bit. He doesn't want to make the move into bus stop. I don't know if he's saving fuel or if he's saving time, but he's going to lose time through bus stop there. The little bit of that air wash and just having to check up, that's going to cost him. I think he's going to be kicking himself a little bit. He could have had a good run there if he wanted it.
Wupker also took less fuel on his stop. Remember, he was an extra 2 laps later on his pit stop. 2 to go this time. They're both back inside the slipstream of Paul Jenkins. Now it's the matter of how these drivers handle this scrap. We've seen the card shown before. We've seen the fuel save. Now it's the matter of when you make the move.
Well, Justin, if I'm either of these drivers, I'm looking to make that move coming out of bus stop on the last lap, or potentially I think you can maybe make the move into bus stop, throw the car off enough that you may just be able to hold it. But I'd feel a lot safer if I was within about 1/10 of a second of the car in front of me, putting the power down off of that last corner there.
And right now these drivers are separated by up to 9/10 in this group. The lead should note as well as only separated by 2.3 seconds, give or take. Not close enough for that draft. White flag this time by for Brian Beard, who has led a majority of the laps. Kita was the toughest battle he's had all night. After Kita had that mistake, he's been able to just take off and run away. White flag is out.
He has incredible credit is due. Brian Beard just absolutely driving this race to perfection as he makes his final way through this infield section and on to what will hopefully be the checkered.
These drivers still have to get to the white flag. Wildridge within 3/10, not that 2/10 or 1/10 you mentioned before. Will Wildridge try and send it, or will he try and back it up? Again, Wildridge electing to save fuel and not make the move quite yet to the white flag for these drivers.
And I think Jeff Wupker doing the exact same thing there, just holding back a little bit. I think their combination of saving fuel and trying to position themselves absolutely perfect perfectly is throw a blanket over the three of these guys as they're really getting close to the International Horseshoe.
And a major mistake for Wupker in the backdrop. He spins it around. That's going to take him out of the fight. It's down to 2 cars now for the battle for P5. Wupker overshot the apex and slid the tires on corner exit.
Heartbreak there for Wupker, but this isn't over yet. Paul Wildridge getting a tighter line through West Horseshoe. Really trying to go and push hard here. He may be able to try to get a run coming out of turn 6 and all the way up onto the track.
Decent buffer. Your race leader is coming out of NASCAR 4, should know. Diego Ascensio's closed in half a second on the white flag lap, but it's not enough. Brian Beard takes home the checker flag, his 4th straight win on a road course in the Acura Throwback Indycar Series. Diego Ascensio's in 2nd, Keto holding on to P3. The battle for 5th is not over, even with the fireworks going off to his left.
And Wildridge rather not getting a good run out of bus stop, running over a little bit of that grass and forced him to back off, but here comes the draft. He's going to be trying to push it. He may be able to have it here.
This is a fight for the top 5. Wildridge, one last chance. Does he take it? He's trying it. Jenkins at the stripe holds on for a 5th place finish. A strong recovery drive for Paul Jenkins. Paul Wildridge finishes in 6th. Justin Kirby holds on to P4 despite crashing out of the pit lane. Wupker, Yerk, Gore among your last drivers in the lead lap. Let's take a look at this.
You can see just how close this was. Wildridge diving out to the outside there, trying to make a move, but just a hair back. He clipped that grass ever so slightly coming out of bus stop, and I think that was the difference between a 6th and a 5th place for him here tonight at Daytona.
What a run tonight for Brian Beard. What a dominating finish for him. This could be a turning point for the championship. We'll have to wait and see. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Global Sim Racing channel for the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Welcome back to the virtual Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida for the Rogue Energy post-race show. Rogue Energy drink is designed to replace unhealthy canned energy drinks, coffee, and even traditional pre-workouts. Rogue Energy is sugar-free and loaded with vitamins, antioxidants, and nootropics. Scoop, shake, drink, win. Use promo code UCORA Indy to get 10% off your purchases at rogueenergy.com. It was an energetic race with plenty of rises and falls, but in the end, it's Brian Beard who rised up to the occasion tonight. For the 4th straight time, he is a winner on the road courses and the Acura Throwback Indycar Series, finishing off the road course slate a 4 for 6 in 2020. Diego Ascensio's with one of his best runs all season comes up P2, gained about 2 seconds in the final 3 laps of this race to finish 1.4 seconds behind. Kashikita finished in P3 tonight. He was in the scrap for the race lead and had a strong chance of winning the race before contact with Brian Beard. What was a road racing incident knocked him to as far back as P3, 8 seconds behind. Justin Kirby, Paul Jenkins, Paul Waldridge, Jeff Wupker, Andy Yerk, Tower Gore, Christopher Matrician round out your top 10, owning 9 cars on the lead lap tonight. DJ Clark.
Coming home in 11th was Nate Burke, followed by Owen McLaughlin, who was 7 laps down after that contact. Christopher, 13 laps down in 13th. Brian Greenlee, who did not finish, and rounding out the rest of the guys who did not finish, David Hall, Christopher Richards, and Mike Ellis, who was involved in that first lap accident in the bus stop.
Some drivers had some rough ones, but Brian Beard had a fairly easy one tonight. Led a majority of the laps tonight. He's your winner in the Grand Prix of Lake Lloyd. How does it feel, Brian, first of all, to win your 4th straight road course race on the trot?
Feels great, but I can assure you it was not easy because of my mistakes in the bus stop.
Yeah, let's talk about those mistakes. In fact, you made a couple mistakes with a couple slowdown penalties. What was it with you pushing so hard at the bus stop? You were the hardest who was pushing in that section, but also those 2 slowdowns lost you the lead at one point.
Yeah, so with practice and what I kind of discovered I was a little bit quicker than everybody getting in and out of the bus stop. But I just I made a couple of big mistakes there. But luckily, I was able to recover from that.
You also, of course, had an incident with the 30 machine. Talk to us about that closest fight you had all race with Kachikita, where you were going back and forth down the front straightaway a few times with the 30.
Yeah, I felt really bad about that we got together. I had the inside going into one. He just kind of came down on me. I mean, it was just a racing incident, but I just didn't have anywhere to go, honestly.
This is a crucial race for the championship, of course. Did not take part in the last race. In fact, registered as mentioned by race control from hospital. Now, the points battle is going to be even more tighter after tonight. What's your mindset for the closing stage of the season as they are both ovals to round out the season?
Finish in front of Paul and don't wreck the car.
Okay, what's the easiest way to try and make sure you don't do either of those things then?
Qualify up front. Hopefully.
Very simple. Anyone you want to thank at that point?
My sponsor, 94 Motorsports, and our league sponsor, Scott Bolster, D2 Race Designs, Rogue Energy, Midwest Simulations, and you guys for putting on a hell of a broadcast. Appreciate you guys.
Congratulations on the run. Hopefully you're doing well tonight. Congrats, Brian.
Yes.
Brian Beard, straight to the point, wins and gets your max points on the night. With P2 is DJ Clark. What a run for the number 6.
Diego, really, really solid, albeit a bit of a quiet run there. You were just kind of in the background of a lot of these really great fights, just kept everything nice, cool, calm, and collected. What was it like from your perspective?
Hi, guys. First of all, I want to say that I don't speak English very well, so I don't have much to say. Just congratulate Brian and you guys. Your transmission broadcasting is excellent.
Well, thank you, Diego, and we appreciate you coming into the booth. How do you feel about the rest of the season?
Oh, I love this car, this championship. I want to Scott. Scott is a great guy who support too much for us. So I want to congratulate Scott for this championship. That is amazing.
Well, I have to say it's made amazing by drivers like you. So Diego, thank you so much, man, and we'll see you at Chicagoland in a week or so.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Diego Ascensio's coming home in second. Kachikita coming home in P3. And first things first, how are you feeling? Because you had a strong chance of winning this race.
Well, it was a really fun race. It was really tight. when you go side to side into turn one, it's always like some kind of roulette. And unluckily, it didn't go well. We had a contact with Brian, but well, luckily we were both able to keep going. So that's always a good news.
Yes, indeed. How would you describe this race? Because Beard said it wasn't easy. How was it for you?
It was really tough. You had to really take advantage of the draft, so you wouldn't get behind. And it's really tough to go into the chicane at that speed.
Couple more races on the calendar. Will we see you back on the racetrack again, as this was one of your best finishes of the season?
Yeah, well, hopefully, because I wasn't able to race for a while because my wheel broke. So thankfully, my brother lent me his wheel, and now I'm able to race again. So I hope to be back for the final races of the year, and hopefully be back next year.
That's great to hear. I know there was a couple drivers who, via voice chat prior to tonight's race, were excited to see you back on the racetrack this evening. Who would you like to thank for your run tonight on said racetrack here at Daytona?
Well, first of all, to my to my brother who lent me his wheel, to my teammates at Andes Racing, and to my former teammates of Crash for Cash, who I saw today at the track, and well, to all of you, to ESRAC, and to the organizers who have a really good championship.
Congratulations on the run tonight.
Thank you.
Takashikita coming home with P3 tonight. Started all the way in P8 and this one. A good recovery from his incident as well. DJ, we didn't have too many expectations for this race because there were so many unknowns. In the end, though, how do you feel this race went based on what you've seen tonight?
Well, I can understand exactly why IndyCar hasn't come here, because this is it's certainly a bit of a dangerous track in the real world on these high speeds. But man, did it put on a good show tonight. And kudos to Brian Beard getting done exactly what he needed to do and capitalizing on a mistake incurred upon Paul Jenkins. Jenkins obviously not having any fault in that, but what it does is it sets up the next two rounds and the final two rounds of this championship to be absolutely nail biters.
Now let's talk about that next race, because Chicagoland, for those who do not know, there was recent news in the past couple weeks with the unveiling of the NASCAR schedule. No races will be taking place at Chicagoland. There's been development projects discussed for that facility and that property for warehouses. It's going to potentially be a historic one, especially with the recent news with Chicagoland.
It's really a bit of a shame. Chicagoland is, I think, one of the better mile-and-a-half intermediate ovals in the United States. Very, very interesting circuit with the curving backstretch. It really kind of throws you off guard. It's just banked at the right angles that makes it a whole heck of a lot of fun. You can really run too wide pretty safely there, and it always puts on really, really good racing. So I think for these Indy cars, it's going to make for a great battle. I think it's going to be very hard for anybody to pull out ahead. And frankly, it makes me very thankful for something like iRacing, that we are able to preserve tracks that may be going by the wayside, like Chicagoland or Iowa, as well as tracks that have already disappeared into the ethos, like North Wilkesboro.
Especially with the push for North Wilkesboro, starting that trend with Nashville, potentially future tracks as well in iRacing. But on that note, I'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's race from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. Also, I'd like to thank Ultimate Conquest Online Racing Association for organizing this thrilling series, as well as the many sponsors who help this series on your screen now. Also, like to take the time to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed up on screen. Special thanks go to Jude Lawn, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today and DJ and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC and its upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check out our social media at Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Also, if you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise at gsrc.storeandview1.com. Don't forget to head over to your YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment on the Global Sim Racing channel. As talked about, it's the Windy City 200 for the second to last race of the season. Lots of pressure is on now for that race. Afternoon conditions. 133 laps are on the docket. Be sure to tune in. That'll take place on October 22nd. Coverage starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 7:30 p.m. Pacific. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on screen, so check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.